Welcome to your favorite drive-in theater and a sparkling new season. Watch our screen and local newspapers for all the fine shows coming this way. Show after show will feature the latest hits, the biggest stars for fun-filled, pleasure-packed evenings. Relax, come as you are, and spend an enjoyable night out with the entire family. No parking problems, no babysitting problems. And there are always tasty snacks at our modern refreshment stand.
Thanks, folks. And once again, welcome back.
about to witness the takeoff of the first manned rocket to outer space. We pick up the count. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0!
We're off to visit the planets. There are treats galore in the stars. Venus is loaded with candy, and ice cream is found upon Mars. The soda pop's fizzing on Saturn. When you're thirsty, it sure hits the spot. And Jupiter's really jumping with popcorn that's buttered and hot. But the best of them all is the planet, where all of these treats are at hand. And that is the spot we now head for, our theater refreshment stop.
Collapsing cosmoses. Damborg glued each of his 6 eyes to the lenses of the cosmoscope. His nasal tentacles were orange with fear, and his antennae buzzed hoarsely as he dictated his report to the operator behind him. "It has come," he cried. "That blur in the ether can be nothing less than a fleet from outside the space-time continuum we know. Nothing like this has ever appeared before. It must be an enemy. Give the alarm to the Intercosmic Chamber of Commerce. There's no time to lose. At this rate they'll be upon us in less than 6 centuries. Hackney must have the chance to get the fleet in action at once." I glanced up from the Windy City grab bag, which had beguiled my inactive peacetime days in the supergalactic patrol. The handsome young vegetable, with whom I shared my bowl of caterpillar custard since earliest infancy, and with whom I had been thrown out of every joint in the intradimensional city of Castor-Yar, had really a worried look upon his lavender face. After he had given the alarm, we jumped on our ether bikes and hastened across to the outer planets on which the chamber held its sessions. Within the great council chamber, which measured 28 square feet, with quite a high ceiling, were gathered delegates from all of the 37 galaxies of our immediate universe. Allstoff, president of the chamber and representative of the Milliners' Soviet, raised his eyeless snout with dignity and prepared to address the assembled multitude. He was a highly developed protozoan organism from Nov Kos, and spoke by emitting alternate waves of heat and cold. "Gentlemen," he radiated, "a terrible peril has come upon us, which I feel I must bring to your attention." Everybody applauded riotously as a wave of excitement rippled through the variegated audience, those who were handless slithering their tentacles together. He continued, "Hackney, crawl upon the dais." There was a thunderous silence, during which a faint prompting was heard from the dizzy summit of the platform. Hackney, the yellow-furred and valorous commander of our ranks through numerous installments, ascended to the towering peak inches above the floor. "My friends," he began, with an eloquent scraping of his posterior limbs, "these treasured walls and pillars shall not mourn on my account." At this point, one of his numerous relatives cheered. "Well do I remember when—" Allstoff interrupted him. "You have anticipated my thoughts and orders. Go forth and win for the dear old Intercosmic." 2 paragraphs later found us soaring out past innumerable stars toward where a faint blur 500,000 light-years long marked the presence of the hated enemy, whom we had not seen. What monsters of malformed grotesqueness seethed out there among the moons of infinity, we really didn't know, but there was a malign menace in the glow that steadily increased until it spanned the entire heavens. Very soon we made out separate objects in the blur. Before all my horror-stricken vision areas there spread an endless array of scissors-shaped spaceships of totally unfamiliar form. Then from the direction of the enemy there came a terrifying sound, which I soon recognized as a hail and a challenge. An answering thrill crept through me as I met with uplifted antennae this threat of battle with a monstrous intrusion upon our fair system from unknown outside abysses. At the sound, which was something like that of a rusty sewing machine, only more horrible, Hackney too raised his snout in defiance, radiating a masterful order to the captains of the fleet. Instantly the huge spaceships swung into battle formation, with only 100 or 2 of them many light years out of line.
C'est prêt, à table. Je t'ai déjà dit pas de jouer à table. Je reviens.
morning, Isaac. Still reading, I see?
Indeed, Professor de Jong. Human nature is quite confounding. May I query you on the subject matter?
We need to stay focused, Isaac. Today's the big day, remember? But go on, you have time for your daily question. But then, back to work.
Sir, can you tell me why, unlike any other animal species on Earth, humans develop such highly self-destructive behavior?
Och, mijn lieve robot. Nature may have made humans, but we're not just animals. No more than you are just a computer. We evolved and we grew more intelligent, and we learned how to control the nature order of things. Just as you have grown from your man-made brain chip into an intelligent being who may someday control and even eradicate us.
How consternating. These books intimate that the more intelligent humans grew, the less logical they became. Why dilapidate one's own natural environment?
Follow me and carry the cleaner, please. You know, Isaac, you'll never truly understand what it means to struggle for one's survival. Because only a living being can fear death. And you are just a machine being. Pure logic. There were once 19 billion people living on Earth, and everyone wanted the same simple thing. To live, to eat, to breathe, to reproduce. Our biggest mistake was believing Earth could sustain them all and itself without compromise. Who knows? Maybe the asteroid that hit Earth gave us one last chance to get it right.
Thank you, Professor. I will cogitate on your reply.
There's just one more thing needed to complete this masterpiece.
Professor, is it time?
Yes, Isaac. It's time to settle them into their new home.
If I may, Professor, have you considered offering this new humanity an even better start?
Sometimes I wonder about your underlying programming, Isaac. Well, just for today, I removed your limiters. You're an eco-android designed to recreate a perfect ecosystem. Now, do your job. I need to get to higher ground to send the signal. When you are done here, prepare the medical center to receive the refugees for detour. Fucking robot.
Do your job. Do your job. Do your job. But robots can't harm human.
Manifestly, Professor de Jong, you are not human. The terraformation process is now 100% operational, Professor. This ecosystem will be perfect, as ordained. Just one more thing. To complete this masterpiece,
It's refreshment time, folks. Time out for a delicious snack in our sparkling refreshment building. Every item a fresh, appetizing taste treat.
We've a large assortment of freshly made sandwiches. How about a pizza? None better anywhere. Sizzling hamburgers grilled to your taste. Mouth-watering chili dillies.
Dog days, hot dog days that is, somehow have a way of turning out to be fun days. The pop and sizzle of the juicy meat seems to say, come and get me, I'm done to a turn. Yep, hungry or not, it's hard to resist the tantalizing aroma and taste appeal of a sizzling hot dog. The nice part of it is, there's one waiting for you right now at the refreshment stand.
What if I told you that an author predicted that he would die by drowning? What if I told you that the book that he wrote described the sinking of the Titanic years before it sank? That's weird, but not too weird. What if I told you that another author predicted almost every major event about the sinking of the Titanic? That would definitely be too real. It's my job to find the strangest mysteries and the most true yet unbelievable coincidences. When I first started skimming these books and reading the details, I almost thought it was a mistake, that someone had lied about when these books were written. But stick around until I finish this, because I'm saving the most unbelievable coincidence that I have ever heard, and I've heard a lot, for the very end. It's safe to say after this video your mind will be fully blown, and you'll agree that what I have found is too real. The first book isn't as spot on as the second at predicting the sinking of the Titanic. It's titled, quote, How the Mail Steamer Went Down in Mid-Atlantic by a Survivor, end quote. It was written in 1886 by a spiritualist and investigative journalist named W.T. Stead. It tells the story of an unnamed ship, an ocean liner just like the Titanic, sinking in the Atlantic. Note, though, that this book was written 25 years before the Titanic. The hero of the story is on the ship and notices that there aren't enough lifeboats on deck to carry all the passengers of the ship. This is where the strangeness starts. As the story goes on, the ship passes through heavy fog and strikes a smaller ship. As water flows into the ship, women and children are given priority seating on the lifeboats. Fighting and arguing breaks out, and in the end, out of 700 people, the ship only has 200 surviving the horrible disaster. The name of the hero of the story is Thompson. He only survives due to a lifeboat circling back and seeing him struggling to stay afloat. The story concludes with a piece of advice from the author W.T. Stead. Quote, This is exactly what might take place and what will take place if liners are sent to sea short of boats. Now, I'm going to inject some logic into this tale. The fears of sinking ocean liners at this time were pretty normal due to it being a very popular method of travel. Many books were written that contained mention of these massive and awe-inspiring ships. This part of the story up to now isn't what makes this story part of the video. In a horrible twist of fate, this author had told his friends that he predicted he would die by drowning, and he did, after sinking on the Titanic. That's right. The author W.T. Stead drowned during the April 15, 1912 sinking of the RMS Titanic. After reading this story, I found a line that sent chills up my spine. This line from the story that W.T. Stead wrote in 1886 most likely describes his true final moments as the Titanic sunk around him. Then I was left with a great multitude, whose agonized clamor stunned me. I felt a mighty, convulsive moment. Then the sea seemed to flash down on me in one mass, as if the wall of water fell from a high crag. Then I heard a humming noise in my ears, and with a gasp, I was up amid a blackened, wriggling sheet of drowning creatures. From How the Mail Streamer Went Down in the Mid-Atlantic by a Survivor, written in 1866 by W.T. Stead, just 25 years before he died on the Titanic. If you thought that the first story was too real, stay with me. The next one will put the first one to shame. An 1898 novella written by Morgan Robertson features a fictional ocean liner written 14 years before the Titanic sunk and years before it was even conceptualized. It tells the story of an ocean liner that sinks in the North Atlantic after striking an iceberg. The sinking of this ship and the Titanic have many similarities. Both were described as the largest craft afloat and the greatest of the works of men. These two specific quotes described both. Also, these key points have been said to predict the future. The ship in the book was 800 feet long, displacing 45,000 tons of water. The Titanic was 882 feet long, displacing 46,000 tons of water, only a difference of 1,000 tons, and only a difference of 82 feet in length. Both of these ships were described with the word unsinkable in the book and all through newspapers and spoken words. Both had what was described in the book and on the Titanic as a triple screw propeller. Both featured a shortage of lifeboats as the crux of the disaster. The book and the story carries as few as the law allowed, 24, which could carry half of her total capacity of 3,000. The Titanic carried only 16 lifeboats. Both struck an iceberg, and in the book, the ship moving 25 knots struck an iceberg on the starboard side on a night in April in the North Atlantic, only 400 nautical miles from Newfoundland. If you look it up and fact check me, the Titanic was moving 23 knots, 2 more. It struck an iceberg on the starboard side, the same side. This is where it gets insane. On a night in April in the North Atlantic, both 400 nautical miles from Newfoundland. The ship in the book sank and the majority of 2,500 passengers died, with only 13 surviving. And the Titanic, the majority of her 2,000 passengers died, with 705 surviving. A discrepancy amongst the surviving people, but only a 500 passenger difference. After the Titanic sank, many people credited Robertson as clairvoyant or able to predict the future. And I haven't even told you the craziest part. I've been withholding the name of the ship in the book. The ship was named the Titan. I'll let that sink in for 1 second. All the similarities I just described. The Titanic, with this book written all these years beforehand, all the similarities in the book, before the Titanic was even conceptualized, let alone named. In this small novel, the book was the Titan. 2 letters away from being the Titanic. Now take all of those coincidences together. In his book, the Titan may have as well been the Titanic. How is this possible? The first novel has a man writing a story that is massively similar to the Titanic, and then 25 years later dying on that same fateful voyage, with a passage in his own book that seems to describe his very death. And in the second book, a man describes just about every detail of the ship, the way it sunk, how many people were on board, the type of propeller, and even the name of the ship is the same as the Titanic, with 2 letters added at the end. As I've said before, some events are powerful. A wedding, a baby being born, a loved one passing. You can feel deep inside you something moving during these events. They are powerful enough to move a single person. I'm not overly religious, and I'm definitely overly skeptical. But even through my skepticism, some things are too real, and they affect you all at once in such a powerful way. Couldn't something be so powerful that it transcends the normal? That it creates so many powerful coincidences that someone whose eyes are open to the more than real could only get a small glance for a short second when peering through the looking glass of innumerable coincidental happenings? Maybe not. Maybe we piece random things together. But I'll say this, as more and more coincidences pile up, I start to think that things are definitely too real. Welcome to the show. If you're like me, then you love looking at UFO videos, and that may have been what brought you to YouTube. It's what brought me to YouTube. One of the original things I loved looking at was UFOs. I've always told the story about what got me into UFOs on YouTube, but I'm not going to do that right now. What I want to talk to you about, though, is the Blessed Virgin Mary Miracle of the Sun in Fátima, because I looked this story up. Well, not this event. I looked it up about a year ago. We did a video on it on my main channel, and we've talked about it a lot because it's just one of the most strange stories out there. It has a religious context. Some people think it doesn't. Some people think it's a UFO sighting, like an original UFO sighting from back in the day. And other people will tell you that it's just a mass hysteria. In fact, some scientists admit that something happened, but they think it's in the minds of the people that were watching. I'm not going to go that far, because I do believe something happened that day in Fátima. I do. I think something very strange happened, whether it was religious or not, though, that's up to you. And then, after we talk about it, I'm going to show you what's happened to YouTube's UFO community. Would you believe this is a real video? This is, but this isn't. And if you try to search and find any type of real UFO video now on YouTube, just like with every other YouTube community, the people that are willing to clickbait and show you fake stuff are the ones that get all the views. In 3 days, 109K views on a fake UFO, where they pretend like it's real. I think it kind of puts down the entire subject. This is a picture reportedly from Fátima, back on that fateful day in 1917. Is it really, though? Some people disagree. This is really a picture from Fátima, though. So let's talk about what Fátima was, the miracle of the sun, and why it's such an interesting story. It's one story that you must read about. You have to educate yourself on this because it happened. So let's get into it. Here we go. The miracle of the sun, also known as the miracle of Fátima, was an event that occurred on the 13th of October 1917, attended by a very large crowd who had gathered in Fátima, Portugal, in response to a prophecy made by 3 shepherd children. The prophecy was that the Virgin Mary, referred to as Our Lady of Fátima, would appear and perform miracles on that date. Newspapers published testimony from reporters and other people who claimed to have witnessed extraordinary solar activity, such as the sun dancing or zigzagging in the sky, flying or careening towards the earth, and emitting multicolored light and radiant colors. According to the reports, the event was about 10 minutes long. The local bishop opened the canonical investigation of the event on November of 1917 to review witness accounts and assess whether the alleged private revelation from Mary was compatible with the Catholic theology. The local priest conducting the investigation was particularly convinced by the concurring testimony of extraordinary solar phenomena from secular reporters, government officials, and even skeptics in attendance. That's the key thing in the story of Fátima. It definitely happened. You've got skeptics that tell you it happened. You've got priests that tell you it happened. You've got all kinds of different people that tell you that this happened. Now let's take a look at a video really quick, because some people on YouTube want you to think that they're recording events just like Fátima all the time. Take a listen.
It is, Molly, it's flashing.
What's flashing, darling?
Look, to see the sun.
You can't stare at the sun normally.
It's doing it now, guys.
Are you seeing it?
Unreal.
Oh, there
it's
it goes.
Doing it.
Yep.
You don't see a red aura?
No, but I see it moving.
I have it on a video, so we can check it out later.
Ah, vedi? No, aspetta, ecco ora. Vedi? Ma... sì, ma infatti pure se guardi così... Guarda.
Now, do you see the sun flashing right here? The sun flashing is not real. I will tell you that right now. That is from the camera. A lot of people will kind of manipulate their camera's shutters and the eye of the camera in order to make something funky happen, just to get people's hopes up. I just want you to know that this kind of thing has happened across YouTube for a very long time, okay? At the gathering on 13th of October 51 at Fátima, the papal legate, I don't know how to say it, Cardinal Federico Tedeschini, told the million people attending that on 30 October, 31 October, 1 November, and 8 November 1950, Pope Pius XII himself witnessed the miracle of the sun from the Vatican gardens. The early and enduring interest in the miracle and related prophecies has a significant impact on the devotional practices of many Catholics. There has been much analysis of the event from critical, sociological, and scientific perspectives. According to critics, the eyewitness testimony was a collective of inconsistent and contradictory accounts. Proposed alternative explanations include witnesses being deceived by their senses due to prolonged staring at the sun and then seeing something unusual as expected. Every time something like this happens, skeptics who will say there's no way something real happened there will step in and try to tell you that it's not real. Whereas other people that are credible, that have, been respected throughout a community for their entire lives, who have held government jobs, other jobs, lawyers, from lawyers all the way to reporters, will come out and stake their reputation on what they saw. What do you believe? Do you believe the eyes of someone who was there, or do you believe the unbelievable challenging of someone that wasn't? That's up to you. So in the beginning of the spring of 1917, this is where it gets really strange, and this is where I think this is worth listening to. Beginning in the spring of 1917, 3 Catholic shepherd children living near Fátima reported apparitions of an angel. And starting in May of 1917, apparitions of the Virgin Mary, whom the children described as the Lady of the Rosary, The children reported a prophecy that prayer would lead to an end of the Great War, and that on 13 of October of the year, the lady would reveal her identity and perform a miracle so that all may believe. Newspapers reported the prophecies, and many pilgrims began visiting the area. The children's accounts were deeply controversial, drawing intense criticism from both local, secular, and religious authority. A provisional administrator briefly took the children into custody, believing the prophecies were politically motivated in opposition to the officially secular First Portuguese Republic established in 1910. Describing the event, the estimates of the number of people present ranged from 30 to 40,000. By Avelino de Almeida, writing for the Portuguese newspaper O Século, to 100,000 people, estimated by lawyer Dr. Jose Almeida Garrett, the son of the professor of natural sciences at the University of Coimbra. Various claims have been made as to what actually happened during the event. According to many witnesses, after a period of rain, dark clouds broke and the sun appeared as an opaque, spinning disk in the sky. It was said to be significantly duller than normal and to cast multicolored lights across the landscape, the people, and the surrounding clouds. The sun was then reported to have careened towards the earth before zigzagging back to its natural position. Witnesses reported that their previously wet clothes were suddenly completely dry, as well as wet and muddy ground had been previously soaked because of the rain that had been falling. Not all witness reports seeing the sun dance. Some people only saw radiant colors, and others, including some believers, saw nothing at all. The only known picture of the sun taken during the event shows nothing unusual. The three children who originally claimed to have seen Our Lady of Fátima also reported seeing paranormal visions, including those of Jesus, Our Lady of Sorrows, Our Lady of Mount Carmel, and Saint Joseph blessing the people. In the fourth edition of her memoirs, written in 1941, Lucia said that on the occasion of the third visit to the Cova Diaria on 13 July of 17, she asked the lady to tell them who she was and to perform a miracle so that everyone would believe. The lady told her that they should continue to come to the Cova each month until October, when the requested miracle would occur. DeMarchi accounts. Descriptions of the events reported at Fátima were collected by Father John DeMarchi, an Italian Catholic priest and researcher. DeMarchi spent 7 years in Fátima from 43 to 50, conducting research and interviewing the principals at length. Can you imagine that a person set aside 7 years of their life to investigate this? 7 years of their professional life. The Immaculate Heart, published in 1952, DeMarchi reports their ranks, those present then, included believers and non-believers, pious old ladies, and scoffing young men. Hundreds from these mixed categories have given formal testimony. Reports vary, impressions are in minor details confused, but none to our knowledge has directly denied the visible prodigy of the sun. Everyone he talked to said that they saw the sun do something abnormal. The sun at one moment, here's some of them, okay? Here's some of the witness descriptions taken directly from the day in 1917, preserved in books and passed down to be read by people like us now, all this over 100 years later, 101 years later. One witness testimony reads, and I've got many for you. These are what real people said, okay? This is what real people said about the event. The sun at one moment surrounded with scarlet flame and another aureoled in yellow and deep purple seemed to be an exceedingly swift and whirling movement, at times appearing to be loosened from the sky and approaching the earth, strongly radiating heat. Dr. Domingos Pinto Coelho, writer for the Catholic newspaper Ordem. Another witness testimony is, the silver sun, enveloped in the same gauzy gray light, was seen to whirl and turn in a circle of broken clouds. The light turned into a beautiful blue as if it had come through the stained glass window of a cathedral and spread itself over the people who knelt with outstretched hands. People wept and prayed with uncovered heads in the presence of a miracle that they had awaited. The seconds seemed like hours, so vivid they were. A reporter for the Lisbon newspaper O Dia. The third report, the sun's disk did not remain immobile. This was not the sparkling of a heavenly body, for it spun around on itself as in a mad whirl when suddenly a clamor was heard from all the people. The sun, whirling, seemed to loosen itself from the firmament and advance threateningly upon the earth as if to crush us with its fiery weight. The sensation during those moments was terrible. Terrible. Dr. Marshy attributes this description to Dr. Almeida Garrett, professor of natural sciences at Coimbra University. Next up, as if like a bolt from the blue, the clouds were wrenched apart, and the sun at its zenith appeared in all its splendor. It began to revolve vertiginously on its axis like the most magnificent fire wheel that could be imagined, taking on all colors of the rainbow and sending forth multicolored flashes of light, producing the most astounding effect. This sublime and incomparable spectacle, which was repeated 3 distinct times, lasted for about 10 minutes. The immense multitude, overcome by the evidence of such a tremendous prodigy, threw themselves on their knees. Dr. Manuel Formigao. These are all doctors saying this. I feel incapable of describing what I saw. I looked fixedly at the sun, which seemed pale and did not hurt my eyes. Looking like a ball of snow revolving on itself, it suddenly seemed to come down in a zigzag, menacing the earth. Terrified, I ran and hid myself among the people who were weeping and expecting the end of the world. The last one says, on the day of October 1317, without remembering the predictions of the kids, I was enchanted by a remarkable spectacle in the sky as if I'd never seen before. I saw it from this veranda. It was recognized by the church. Now, some of the believers offered an explanation. Within Catholicism, the event is seen as a fulfillment of a promise by Mary, mother of Jesus, to the shepherd children she appeared to several times before. According to the children's accounts, Mary, referred to as the Lady of Fátima, promised them she would perform a miracle to show people they were telling the truth, and so cause the crowds to see the sun make incredible movements in the sky. Catholics have regarded Mary as a miracle worker for centuries, and this view has continued into the 21st century. Various theologians and epileptic scientists have discussed the limits of scientific explanations for the event and proposed possible mechanisms through which divine intervention could cause a solar phenomenon. Basically, whatever you believe about this event is completely up to you. There are people that are critics out there, and they say that this is actually nothing. That it's just people exaggerating. It was mass illusion because they were all staring at the sky for a while, and it just happened out of nowhere. But you got to remember, doctors, reporters, lawyers, blacksmiths, bakers, everyone witnessing this said the same thing. They all described it as if they thought the world was going to end. Isn't that enough to make us all say, like, you know what, something happened? UFO researchers, ufologists have even considered the fact that it could have been a UFO sighting. Now, one thing that's kind of strange about this, we do have pictures from the event, okay? So 100 years ago, unbelievers flocked to Fatima hoping to see the church humiliated, but they were in for disappointment. Now, I just got this to pull up by searching for it, and I'm not going to read it to you because we just got a description of everything. There are some pictures floating around, just like this picture, which is said to have happened, been taken that day, and show the sun, floating towards the ground with the shadow beneath it. Although this is likely not of that day.